Hi everyone, I am Elisha Krause, and this week on the Washington Examiner Newsmaker Series, I welcome Representative Claudia Tenney, who serves on the House Foreign Affairs Committee with Democratic Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, and who is urging Speaker Pelosi to censor the Democratic Congresswoman for her recent anti-Semitic statements and remarks. Congresswoman, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be on.
So you are a member of a very important committee that recently signed a letter saying that Ilhan Omar, a Democratic representative from Minnesota, who has been adamantly anti-Israel recently and anti-Semitic, you're saying that she should no longer be on the Foreign Relations Committee. Can you explain to our audience why you think that?
Well, technically, I actually was part of a censure resolution, which meant that she has to come to the floor of the House, including the entire squad. I joined Representative Waltz and also Representative Jim Banks of Indiana. We are saying that she and the squad should be censured for their anti-Semitic behavior, for stoking this equivalency between the U.S., Israel, and Hamas and the Taliban, which are terrorist organizations, and that it is, really just unacceptable language. It doesn't live up to our oath of office to protect and defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And that's why we called for the censure of these four members of the squad, who Representative Waltz nicknamed the Hamas caucus yesterday. And I think that's aptly named. I mean, they are supporting a terrorist group over, or at least equivocating a terrorist organization, by the way, designated as a terrorist organization by the United States government to the U.S. It's personally insulting to me as a mother of an active duty Marine officer who's serving our nation. And the United States really, our military, I hold in the highest regard. Our standards are high, our ethics are high. And to put us in the same category as a Hamas or a Taliban is really insulting and also really inflammatory and not something that's acceptable, especially when we've seen twice as many attacks on people of Jewish faith over the past year or so, and we're seeing anti-Semitic behavior around the region, even in a district like mine where there's a very small Jewish population.
Mm-hmm. And I do want to circle to that rise in anti-Semitism in just a little bit, but piggybacking on how you just referenced your fellow Republican colleagues, you guys and other Republicans were pretty consistent in this condemnation of anti-Semitic and violent or vitriolic rhetoric as well. Why do you think that Democrats are so afraid of calling out their own when it comes to anti-Semitic remarks and statements?
Well, there are 12 Democrats who stood up to the comments made by Ilhan Omar, or Representative Omar, and we're hoping that those Democrats who recognize that this inflammatory language is unacceptable for someone who takes the oath to serve in the U.S. Congress. We hope they join with us because their 12 votes would help us get a resolution passed and eliminate this kind of language, or at least censure these four members for their inflammatory language. But unfortunately, Speaker Pelosi has decided not to do anything about this, and she's basically put the kibosh on getting anything to the floor. And unfortunately, these 12 members don't seem to have the courage or feel they're supported enough to be able to do that. And I'm hoping that we can find a bipartisan support for this resolution by continuing to fight for it.
What do you think about Representative Omar and Rashida Tlaib and even AOC's remarks that the 12 members who asked her to clarify her comments, they didn't even ask her to apologize, but they simply asked for clarification, that in doing so we're being Islamophobic?
Yeah, I think this is just a, distractor. It's not true. She has her right to speak her mind. This is the same woman who stood up and said some people did something, in referring to nearly 3,000 Americans murdered on 9/11. So this is just a distractor to take people off the topic. There's no censorship of her freedom of speech. I'm a very strong supporter of the First Amendment and freedom of speech. But inflammatory language when you're an office holder and equating the U.S. military along with the Israeli military to the Taliban and Hamas, who are known terrorist groups.
I do want to circle back to that unfortunate rise in anti-Semitic violence that you referenced even in your district. I live here in Los Angeles, where just the other day a grade school boy was assaulted and punched in the face by a random man on the street. And we are seeing, the cover up of it by the mainstream media and social media. Do you think that the rhetoric from the squad helps embolden these types of assaults against our fellow Americans?
I do in this situation because, again, I cannot emphasize enough how much I support our First Amendment rights. But, there is a growing BDS movement, the boycott, divest, and sanction movement against Israel that seems to be a breeding ground through our universities. There are 11 universities in my district, and sometimes this type of movement is getting some steam there. And in certain groups, and by stoking the fire on this, they're making that acceptable. And that movement does, in a way, reflect anti-Semitism. And even some of our Democratic colleagues agree with us on that.
Why do you think that Speaker Nancy Pelosi lets the squad and others in the House get away with this kind of language and remarks and even actions in meeting with people like Louis Farrakhan, which half of the members of the Black Democratic Congressional Caucus have done, when she's supposed to be the leader of the party?
Yeah, I have no good explanation other than it's a pure lust for power. She maintains the caucus with almost an iron fist. There's really no tolerance for anyone breaking off. And I think that that's how she operates. I mean, right now, the tail is wagging the dog. You see a lot of the squad kind of intimidating by their ability to get so much media coverage and so much, attention that they've intimidated a lot of Democrats into not actually taking positions that would be more center left as opposed to far left, because they're concerned about a primary or concerned about losing their positions. And I would like to work with them to give them the courage to know that we all stand for the United States, our biggest ally in the Middle East, which is Israel. They talk about caring about democracies. Well, this is a great opportunity to talk about, one of the enduring democracies Israel is, known for its innovation and a lot, in helping come up with great ideas that have been helping the United States, whether it's in the military, whether it's, converting salt water to drinkable, potable water. I mean, there's so many things that Israel has done in leading the way in industry. And so they've been a great partner with us and for the United States. We've got to continue to highlight that. And again, I have to go back to those 12 Democrats who stood up and would like to see them join us as we move forward and really cause Nancy Pelosi to stand on this issue once and for all.
I know that you have to run soon, so I have one final question for you. As a woman who represents the great state of New York and a lifelong resident of that state, you've recently tweeted out your frustration with the state Democrats up there for sitting idly by while Governor Cuomo continues to try to cover up his corruption and his mishandling of the COVID pandemic. Can you tell some of our audience about what your thoughts are and what you would like them to do?
Yeah, this has been an aggravation for me. I called for Governor Cuomo's resignation back in 2014 when his corruption, when he created a so-called anti-corruption commission to investigate, intimidate, and extort members of this assembly and the Senate, only to shut down the investigation when it got close to him. And I called for his resignation then, and now there's more evidence leaking out about corruption and ties with Governor Cuomo and so many people who've been associated with him in the past. All the Democrats in the assembly need to do is put an impeachment motion on the floor, a resolution. They need 76 votes, and Governor Cuomo is no longer governor. The Lieutenant Governor, Kathy Hochul, will ascend to being the governor in an interim basis while Governor Cuomo awaits trial in the Senate. I think that they maybe got so much that they wanted in the state legislative process through the budget. That the governor is very powerful in New York. The budget starts with the governor, unlike the federal government, where the budget actually starts in the House of Representatives. And so I think he gave away so many goodies during that process that the Democrats are reluctant to actually work against him. But we'll see what happens. I urge them again. I urge, the Majority Leader, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, who's the Senate Majority Leader. I urge the Assembly Speaker, Carl Hastie, to bring those impeachment articles to the floor and let's investigate. Let's try Governor Cuomo. He needs to go. It's just time. We can't seem to get him to resign. He just continues to resist. But my take on this, again, why it doesn't happen is because for so many years, is almost his entire legacy in New York since he took office in 2011, he has had just a massage from the media. They have never held him accountable the Legislative Correspondents Association, which covers the Albany politicians, really has been giving him nothing but glowing praise. Now is the time to stand up for the residents of New York State, people like me, who my business is celebrating our 75th year. I know people who were sent into nursing homes, who ended up getting, people were victims of nursing homes, which is why we just passed our Essential Caregiver Act, by the way. Mm-hmm. But, these people need justice, and this governor needs to go. It's just the straw has already broken the camel's back. It's just time for the Democrats in the Assembly and the Senate to wake up and make that happen.
Congresswoman, thank you so much for your time. I'd love to have you back in the future, and I'm sure our audience would as well. And be sure to thank your son for his service, and congrats to you for raising a good man who wants to serve his nation.
Thank you. I appreciate it.